everyone, and welcome to the afternoon keynote. My name is Alea Perez, the Youth Services Manager in Roselle, Illinois, and I'll be your moderator today. Our conversation is so exciting. We're going to be exploring epic fantasy storytelling and the culmination of a beloved series, inviting all of you readers into a final journey through a legendary world. And I am super excited to welcome the one and the only Cassandra Clare, the author of The Last King of Faerie, which was published by Random House Children's Books. Hi, Cassandra. How are you doing today?
Hi, it's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so happy to have you. So, we're not going to be working with a ton of time, so I'm just going to jump right into our questions so that everyone gets to hear as much as possible about your latest book in the Shadowhunter Chronicles, which has been around for a very long time, 19 years actually,
Yep.
since the first book came out. So, just to help out some of our newer readers to your work in the audience, and I am genuinely curious how many people that applies to. Can you give us a brief rundown of this epic world that you've built that leads us to the Last King of Faerie?
So brief, I'm gonna strive for. It is a lot of books. The Shadowhunter Chronicles began in 2007 with the six-part series called The Mortal Instruments, which chronicled the adventures of a girl named Clary, her friends and chosen family as she now navigated a heroic quest, her own family issues, her power, all of that kind of stuff. And I just really, I was about halfway through and I realized just I really loved writing in that world. Like I loved the characters, but I also liked just the magic system, how the world worked. And so at that point, I wrote a historical series called The Infernal Devices, which was set in 1878, also in the Shadowhunter world. And after that, there have been several more series. There's been The Last Hours, also historical, The Dark Artifices, modern, and now the Wicked Powers, of which the Last King of Faerie is the first, and that continues on the story that started with City of Bones and continued through the Dark Artifices and now come to an end in Wicked Powers.
Yeah, so it's an incredibly complex world that you've built. For, again, those new readers out there who are stumbling upon your work, who are excited to jump in, are they able to jump right into the Wicked Power series? Do they have to go and read in order? Like, how would you suggest or recommend that folks approach this if they are excited about what they hear today?
I mean, you could start with the first book of the Wicked Powers. There's enough in there to sort of fill you in if you are unfamiliar with the rest of the story and have never read anything else. I would recommend that you, not that you read all of the previous books, but that you read The Dark Artifices, which is a trilogy of three books set in Los Angeles, and the characters in the Wicked Powers are spun off from that series. So I would just encourage people to read it because you're going to get a lot more of their backstory and kind of know them better when you begin the book.
Yeah, so for your longer term readers, those who've been following your career, reading through all of these really fantastic and gripping stories, um, who can they be excited or expect to see make a return, even if it's just like a brief mention here or there? Like, who are they going to get a glimpse at?
I mean, I'm trying to work with basically everybody. The main characters are Ty Blackthorne, Kit Harringdale, Ash Morgenstern, and Drew Blackthorne, who you will have met all of them in the Dark Artifices. But you know, you're absolutely right. By the time that we have reached the Wicked Powers, we have a massive cast of characters from previous books, and I would say you will see all of them who are still alive to be seen at least once. Some of them will play larger roles, secondary roles in the book. Some you're gonna like see more briefly, like but everyone gets checked in on. We see how everyone's doing, and I just feel like that's something that I would want as a reader with the very end of a series. I would want to just know that all my favorite characters are were okay and how they were doing and what was going on with them.
Yeah, is that something that you find enjoyable, like trying to figure out the ways in which they do sometimes make these cameos if they're not one of the major return characters?
So yes, I mean, sometimes every once in a while I'm like, "Oh my God, how am I going to get this person into the story when I know, they're off studying, rune magic on this deserted island or something." But but it is a lot of fun to do cameos. There are a bunch of cameos in the first book that I really like, and I hope that, my readers will see these characters and, remember them and resonate with them. And then there's also just more dramatic storyline for some of the specific characters, like Clary, who, returns in this book, and she actually has her own viewpoint and she has her own story going on and kind of in the background. And so I really wanted to take us out in the way that we came in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's tremendous fun for me to see these glimpses into these characters who, some of them again have been around for so long, some of them newer, but like getting that just layering of storytelling is just so amazing. Um, but as has been mentioned, so Wicked Powers trilogy, Last King of Faerie, very first. So that means we have a few more coming after this. It's the last trilogy in this Chronicles, in the Shadowhunter Chronicles. For you personally, has it sunk in that like you're going to be saying farewell to this universe?
A little, I don't think it's sunk in all the way. Like when I'm writing it, every once in a while, I'll think, introducing like bringing them to a location that we've seen before, or again, meeting a character that we've known from before. I will end up thinking, is this the last time we're ever going to be here? Is this the last time we're ever going to see this? And having to actually sort of like apply that into the story and the way that we, view these people and places. I've never done that before. I've never, finished the Shadowhunter world before. So
Yeah.
it's new. And every once in a while, yeah, it does hit me with this little shock of like, oh my God, you know.
And how would you describe that? I mean, is it fair to say it's bittersweet, where it's like, you're getting to wrap up this thing that's been such a large part of your life and that has multiple facets to it? I mean, how does that feel?
It's interesting. I remember talking once to actually a movie producer who was saying you should always end like a project when you still love it. And I actually thought that was really good advice. I think he was talking about TV, like series, and he was like, sometimes, they can kind of go on too long. You want to end it when you still love it. And I think that's true. So I wanted to end the story while I still loved the world and loved the characters. So it's very bittersweet in the sense that, there's a big part of me that doesn't want to leave it behind, but then another part of me that knows it's probably the best thing to do.
Yeah, yeah. I can't imagine having something like that spring forth from my mind and then having to make that call to let it go. So I don't envy you that decision making, even if you are at that point where you know it's what's best for you. Um, but speaking of that writing process, is it safe to presume for those of us who aren't on the publishing side of things, those of us who are the consumers of these really fun stories, are books two and three like currently in the works? As readers, are looking forward to getting their hands on this one. Kind of what's the presumed timeline of when we can expect more of this story?
I think it like when I first got into public, like had my first book published, I was so shocked at how long it took for the book itself to become a book, right? When I had a completed manuscript, the idea that it would take 2 years to come out was this huge shock to me because I sold it in 2005. It was published in 2007. So I can completely understand that with my readers because I'll say, "Oh, I'm done with it," and I am done with Last King of Faerie. I'm working on the next book, which is called The Last Prince of Hell, and the final book is called The Last Shadowhunter. So I'm in the middle of book two, and it is weird to have that disconnect where I'm, done with that book, on to the next book, and my, readers are still asking me questions about the first book. I'm going to be really excited when that first book comes out and we can like more fully talk about it. So that will be really fun. But yeah, no, I'm really sort of like counting down to the release.
As are we all. And one of the questions I do have for you is when can readers expect to get this book in their hands? Like, when will they have access to it?
November 3rd.
Perfect. So, all right, everyone, fall. Mark it on your
Mark
calendars.
your calendar. It's an excellent Christmas present. Also Hanukkah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect time of year. They have so many holidays that are coming out, birthdays, you name it. So, um, as far as the idea of this trilogy, we're looking at these really fun settings, these really great characters, again, within this really big world. Like, where did this idea come from? Like, what inspired it? Like, as you're looking again at this massive, history that you've essentially written for this world, is this something where there's a kernel of an idea, like you have a sense of the trajectory that it could go? Or was this something that was a much more recent idea?
I think that going all the way like back, right? It's rarely one idea that creates a book or a series. It's usually several. But I remember, I had just moved to New York from Los Angeles, so it was very different, and I was kind of fascinated by New York and the ways in which it was a different city and the history of it, and it's, all of these things. So New York forms a really big like part, like almost a character in the Mortal Instruments. And I had gone to visit a friend of mine who worked at a tattoo shop in the village on 8th Street, and she showed me this book of designs that she had created. And she said, these are like sort of my, my designs that are meant to mimic, but, not replicate the kind of tattoos that people have been getting for thousands of years, because people have always believed that these tattoos have power, that they, are useful in battle, that they both convey messages and they also endow people with magic. And I thought, wow, that's so cool. I don't have any tattoos, and I had never thought about it that way. And so I kind of went home, looked at researched some tattoo stuff and started to think about like, well, what would it be like if there were a race of, demon hunters and their powers came from these specific, magical markings that they could put on their skin, and how would that work? Who are they fighting? Who's my main character? I was a huge fan of the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because I felt like to me, it really went into the idea of a found family. And I love that as a concept and a trope. So I, came into it with knowing that my main character would be, an only child, that she'd be an artist, and that she has a best friend, but she really finds her family among the shadow hunters. And I think that's true for her and for Tessa, the main character of the next series.
Yeah, so as you were writing, the Last King of Faerie in particular, were there any elements that really took you by surprise as you were writing it? Anything that, this again is not your first rodeo. You've written many books. But was there anything that for this story in particular was just like I was not expecting that reaction, that plot line, that character to respond in this way? Anything that was just a complete surprise to you?
Yes, I'm trying to think of a way to say it that isn't
Gonna
spoiler.
spoil.
I know. I'm like, I realized actually, this happens a lot, I think, in my revision of the first draft of the book, that there was a character who I'm trying. I'm trying to think how to do. Our main character, Drew, she's actually missing a bunch of memories. Because of a spell, every time she visits the world of fairy, when she returns, she doesn't remember it. So, and every time she goes, she meets the same person over and over again. This is Ash, who is the prince of the Sealy Court, and so in his mind, they have a relationship, and in her mind, she keeps meeting him for the first time. So I had this sudden realization that I wanted to change the ending, and so I had kept her not knowing about their
Mhm.
meeting. And what surprised me was at the end, like sort of, it was almost like the character said to me, "No, now I remember everything."
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that
it
ending
does get, yeah.
completely slayed me. I'm just like, no.
I know. I was like, it was just one of those things where she was like, I don't want to go through another book without all of my memories. I need to get my memories back. And I was like, okay, I can see how that would, and then once you have that idea, you sort of run it through your head and you're like, oh yes, I can see how that's the story.
Yeah, no, it was such a hook. Like I got to the end and I'm looking where's the rest? Where's the rest of the story? So I was just absolutely devastated in the best way possible. Like that's a
Oh, good.
complimentary
I'm
thing.
glad to hear that. Yes.
Because I found so many of the character kind of partnerships, for lack of a better phrasing, like there were just so much dynamics happening between multiple pairings of characters that um, I was loving the back and forth, the pacing of who we got to see when, and that growth, which sometimes meant that, conflict was happening. I mean, often conflict was happening. And so, yeah, it was just the best way I think to have ended that story. And I really hope folks are getting just how exciting this whole story is, but especially the ending, because, yeah, truly, truly fun series or story to have read. But, um, speaking of all of those connections that exist between these characters, all of these places they visited, the themes, the mythologies, because we do have, fairies, we do have the kind of angel demon mythos. We have so much that's happening. Um, how is it for you to keep track of all of these details? Because again, you are kind of cross-referencing your own writing and other stories. You're having to make decisions here that's going to impact. So what is that like? Is it something that you find easy? Is it hard for you? Want to hear more? Need to hear
Not
more.
easy. I mean, one of the, I think, biggest difficulties is, for a series like this, is remembering everything, is, keeping track of all of it. And because it can be very little details, that you want to think you can remember absolutely everything about all of your characters, but you realize you don't remember absolutely everything about all the people you know in real life. Like, I felt better when I realized that, because I was like, oh no, surely I should know, in the first book it's mentioned that a character has a chipped tooth and I don't remember how he got it. So what my assistant and I have this thing we call the Bible, and it's this massive, sort of folder that has all the different, it has as much information as we can sort of get in it. Everybody's birthdays, their, histories, backstories, where their rune placements are, any injuries or scars they might have, things that frighten them, things that they like, all of that. And so I will usually refer to it, and I've referred to it a lot, in this series, because indeed it does mention so many characters, and we kind of need to know these, I need to know all of these things about them.
Yeah, that sounds like that would be an amazing way to wrap up the series, truly, is to share this
Yeah,
set with
publish
the
the
reader.
Bible. Here you go.
Yes, you're a companion encyclopedia for all of this because I think, yeah, that would be absolutely amazing to be able to pour over all of this work that you've done just to help yourself keep the story straight. So anyway, just throwing that out. Wouldn't mind seeing more. Um, but you kind of mentioned earlier, about chosen family. Like this is something that, is a very real concept to a lot of people, because we, of course, have the families that we're born into. Those aren't always the most supportive, the most healthy, or there's other reasons why they just may not be around or be around in the way that we would have expected or hoped. Um, so we see that a lot. Like that is a huge theme throughout your stories is family. Um, Again, that chosen type in particular. There's a lot of threads about loyalty, sacrifice. These are just some of the themes that run through your work. And sometimes there's a need for a little bit of gentle redirection or guidance from some of the supporting characters in all of this, because of how I think passionate a lot of your main characters are. So it's just really fun to see how they again play off of each other. So those are all timeless themes. Um, but do you think reading and writing in your case about those themes in the time that we're currently living in makes that ability to read those themes more, less, unchanged amount of significance? Essentially, I think I'm asking, you know, does it make them more powerful, do you think, right now because of the environment that we're all in?
I think so, in the sense that I hope it does, make resonate with people, and I've certainly had a lot of people talk to me about the found past family aspect. Is we're living through a time of rising intolerance, and we're living through a time where people's civil rights are under attack. And I think the idea that even if you disagree with your birth family, even sometimes on very substantive things, if they don't accept you the way that you are, you don't feel completely embraced, that there's a family out in the world that will give you all of those things, I think is very meaningful to people, especially in this extremely fractured time that we're in.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, and there are any number of reasons why people might not find that support. I mean, your characters, again, like I continue to just mention this because it is really impactful the way they are written so richly. They have such intricate backstories. You have shown so many different types of identities in your story, and in this one in particular, we see BIPOC characters, queer characters, neurodivergent, we see body diversity. We see a lot of different people essentially that exist in our very real world that aren't always represented in the literature that we read. Um, so with that in mind, if you're able to, like, who in The Last King of Faerie was your favorite character to write or your favorite pairing to write, even if they weren't necessarily the easiest for you to write?
um okay, I would say that uh I can't pick a favorite pairing. I would be murdered for one thing.
Fair
Um,
enough.
but writing Ty Blackthorn was both a big challenge, but also my favorite, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Ty is neurodivergent, I'm neurotypical, so trying to sort of understand and inhabit his mind is a challenge. You want to be able to create a character that resonates with other people who are neurodivergent and who can see themselves in Ty, who is, this really, I think, like wonderful, lovable character who is, he has flaws, but he's smart, he's talented, he loves very intensely, he has these intense emotions, he has, and so I want people to be able to resonate with that. I worked with a team of sensitivity readers to try to get him right. So I feel like sometimes when I say like he was the biggest challenge, people think that means I didn't enjoy it, but actually I think the biggest challenges are sometimes the things we enjoy the most. And I would say that writing Ty was a really lovely experience in and of the fact that he is a character who does not lie to himself. He doesn't tell himself stories about his feelings. He knows what his feelings are. He isn't dishonest in his own mind ever. And I don't think I've ever written a character like that before. And I think that clarity is really interesting.
Yeah, I think one of the things I was most fascinated with in Ty's relationships is he is also deeply loved in return. It's not just that he is outpouring, it is that it is being reciprocated. And I think that that's something that we don't often see with neurodivergent characters when they are represented. We tend to see them kind of othered. And so I loved that you're giving that to readers, whether they are able to relate because they themselves are neurodivergent in some capacity, or whether it's more of an empathy situation. But that I think is going to be really powerful with readers who come to this story, that they get to see that positive portrayal of, and you are also worthy of strong love being returned. So
That's really interesting. I honestly hadn't thought of it that way, but yes, absolutely. He is. I mean, as you'll find out in the book, he is extremely loved, and extremely supported by his family. And I didn't. There are all sorts of important narratives to be told about neurodivergence, but my hope here was that has always been that anyone could see themselves as a shadow hunter. So I just wanted to focus on what his experiences were as a neurodivergent shadow hunter, and have the book be about how he thrives.
yeah. Yeah, and as you mentioned, he's not a perfect human, and that's true of all of the characters, whether they're human, fairy, demon, what have you. like so many of your characters are represented in this very gray fashion where they're neither fully good nor fully bad. They are somewhere in between. Um, does it feel at all complicating to have that be such a um, thorough part of your characterization that like so many of them are these like fully rounded out, like it would be easier, I would imagine, to just have them be very black or white. I am good, I am bad, but that's not your character. So what's that like writing for characters who do show both?
I think that it's something that I'm attracted to in books is characters with moral complexity. And I also feel like in order to write characters, I have to empathize with them on some level. Even the bad guys, no one thinks of themselves as the villain of the story. They always have a justification and a reason, and it may be buried in a real source of pain. And I feel like you need to know that and understand that. Even if what they are doing is unforgivable. It's not about forgiveness, it's about understanding. And for all of the characters, yes, I want them to be able to make mistakes and sometimes, do things that are bad, in sometimes in the service of what they think is a good thing. Sometimes they can be selfish. It's a spectrum of behavior, but I feel like I don't relate well to characters that are either perfectly good or perfectly evil, and I think that because we all are flawed, we're all complicated, and we respond, I think, often best to characters who reflect that. And I think that it's something that's really, uh, for me, important to sort of depict and say, you can love this main character. They are a good person, they mean to do good, but they're still going to screw up sometimes.
Yeah. And I really love the way you phrase that as, people may be doing what we can objectively call bad, but in the service of something they truly believe in to be good. Like that is such a beautiful way of phrasing that because I think that's so universal in the human condition. So that is lovely. One of the last questions I wanted to ask you, because we're getting pretty close to time, and it's unfortunate because I have so many more questions, but you mentioned Ty had uh, a lot of sensitivity readers who are helping because that wasn't an experience that you've personally had. But was there a character that like came supernatural to you in terms of crafting them and how you wrote them? Like who would that be if any of them kind of fit into that mold?
Oh, Drew, definitely. In especially in this series because, we start talking about body diversity. I was like her, a teenage girl who was plus size. I was, bigger than other girls, and I had a lot of the stuff that she deals with there. I never wanted to portray her as somebody who doesn't think she's attractive or hates her body. That none of that is true about her. But what is true is that the world treats her differently, and, one of the things that any plus size girl would know is that when you are growing up that way, people assume you are older than you are. Men, especially, assume you're older than you are, and they feel very free to comment on your body. And strangers in general feel very free to comment on your body. And that was something that I did want to show with Drew. Like, she loves herself. She thinks she's beautiful. I think she's beautiful. Everyone that we know in the book think she's beautiful, but there are plenty of characters who do comment pretty freely on her body. And to me, when I look at plus size representation, that is something that I think of as very important because it's such an integral part of being in it, like in the same way that when you're writing women's bodies are reacted to by men in a different way. There are very specific things there. And if you are a girl who is young and you are read by men as being 5 or 6 years older than you are because of your body shape, you're going to get attention that you're not ready for
Yeah.
and comments that feel intrusive. And so I did want to show those things. And that's that is personal to me. All of that is straight out of my own experience. She has a panic disorder, which I also have had. And so all of those things are based on my own experience. So I would say that Drew was the one character I didn't use a sensitivity reader for because I felt like these were all experiences I had and based on myself.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I think readers are so going to enjoy the way that you do balance that personal experience look within the larger societal experience that people have. So yes, if I've not hit this hard enough for you readers, I do strongly encourage pick up the story. Again, so much complexity, so much just strong world building, strong characters. It's going to fly by. It's a hefty volume, but it is so worth all of the pages that you turn to read through it. And on that note, Cassandra, I want to thank you profusely for your time today. I want to thank everyone in the audience for tuning in. We'll be continuing with two more concurrent panels looking for new love and nightmare narratives. I just want to reiterate for everyone, now more than ever, it's super important that we're standing up for freedom to read and access to information. Please be an active participant in our democracy in any and every way possible. Thank you all so much. Take care until next time.
Support your libraries.